Hey, so ignore the image. It's completely unrelated to whatever I'm doing. It's just because my camera is not yet up to par, and so adding a giant piece of my face is not particularly good looking, and so I thought that this picture was better looking than I am, and so hopefully it improves the quality of the video. Today I wanted to talk about something related to why I rated FalleN above Kenny S. I think that so I brought up the argument because many people think that Kenny S is more mechanically skilled than FalleN is. And that's a difficult question. I mean, I would be inclined to agree with that if you mean by mechanical ability just your flexibility using the AWP with, your ability to flick, your accuracy and tracking, and your firing speed and your accuracy rate and all these things. I agree that he's probably better than FalleN is in that regard. But I still rank him higher than Kenny S. And so why is that? Well, one of the reasons is obviously because Kenny S hasn't played a ton of finals, and so I haven't seen him as much as I've seen FalleN, and he hasn't had the chance to impress me as much. And he does have better statistics, I think, overall. But that doesn't mean much to me, especially when you're talking about AWPers, because you don't know how much of their rating comes from the amount of times they've saved or the amount of times they've gotten kills out of a retake, or it's not clear how much of their rating is impacted by their cast and whether or not that's a good thing. So I'm not particularly perturbed by that. And the reason I voted him above Kenny S is because everyone, if you ask anyone who the best AWPer is, and that is anyone who's a pro player, they're all going to say FalleN. And the reason that they say FalleN is the same reason that they're more scared of Fer than they are of coldzera, because these players have more of a fear factor than coldzera would, or a passive player, maybe someone like Magisk, on T side or something like that, automatic, these players. And so the question is, why does that have value? Is that just players, being biased in a way where they are more scared of getting dicked, and they should that factor into our decision making? And these are difficult questions, and I'm going to argue that you should. Here's why. So if a player has a fear factor, it'd be scary to play against. Fer is scary to play against. FalleN is scary to play against. I'd say that Rain is scary to play against now. These incredibly aggressive, dynamic players, Draken on CT side. The reason that these people are intimidating to other players is because they do unpredictable, intelligent decision-making that completely dismantles the opponent's strategy, or their default, or their their CT setup, or whatever. These people are crazy, basically, and they do crazy shit. And they do it in different ways. Draken is aggressive in a different way than FalleN is. But in both cases, they have a way of dismantling your defense or your offense that is very intimidating, because you never expect it, or you feel like there's nothing you can do. And part of that is psychological, of course. But another part of it is impactful, because the fact that they're scared of you will change their behavior. They would do something that they think is optimal. They would have a default that they prefer. They would run against any other team, but they can't do it against you. Like, you can't just slowly take you can't just slowly take fountain control on overpass on T side when you're playing against Fer, because Fer is a crazy son of a bitch, and he will kill your entire team if you don't play carefully, if you don't play with 3 players there, or 2 players there, and you molly all positions, and you have to be way more prepared for Fer than you would if anyone else was holding that position, maybe except for like Magisk or something like that. And so that player will change your behavior, and will make you do things that you wouldn't do against other teams, and you wouldn't do them against other teams because they're not desirable, that you don't want to do that. You just have to do it. And so it creates inefficiencies in the way that your opponents play, in virtue of how aggressive you are. It's the same thing with FalleN. FalleN plays crazy around inner train, and the way that he opts means that you have to be way more terrified. You might have to bring your op there to peek that position, something that Device likes to do, to be able to clear him off green train. Or FalleN will usually step to, 2 steps to the left, 2 steps to the right of where you would normally. So you're jiggle peeking for an angle, and now FalleN's just not at the angle you expected. And so you're not jiggle peeking, you're just moving around at an angle that FalleN can see you at. These are a bunch of different things that these players do, these nuances of the game, that will change their behavior, because now you won't want to jiggle peek and bait the shot and then kill the AWPer, because it's FalleN. You can't do that against FalleN, or at least you feel like you can't. And just the simple fact that their play style changes the opponent's behavior in some very impactful ways means that the other team is now playing worse in lieu of the way that you decided to play. The way that you play connector has to change if you're playing against Fur, or now if you're playing against Rain, because these players are so good at finding the right timing. They're so good at finding an opening and destroying you if you're holding connector, that you can't actually afford to kind of, ignore underpass, or, not make it a focus, because they're going to destroy you if you don't. And so that's just one of the things, it's one of these things that I think goes unnoticed if you're not aware of the player's mentality, because the players are the ones that are feeling that pressure. You can't see it in game. You don't really notice unless you're paying the closest of attention. You're not really noticing the slight differences in the default, or the couple flashbangs, or the molly that they're using that they wouldn't normally use. You're not noticing these things unless you're the player that has to do those things, right? And you don't know the angles that they would jiggle peek that they're just going to wide peek, which is riskier because it's FalleN, and it's probably going to kill them if they jiggle peek anyway, or take more time to jiggle peek even more of the angle. You won't notice that unless you're a player, but it's still real impact. And so here we should listen to what the players have to say about the best AWPer, because it makes a significant difference. FalleN is a scarier player, and he'll change the way that the players that play against him play. And KennyS won't do that to the same extent. And FalleN does that to such an extent that even though he's the 3rd best player on his team, players still say that he's the best AWPer in the world, which strikes as strange. So that's an interesting idea, and I think that it makes a big difference. It goes back to this idea of opportunity cost. You're imposing an opportunity cost on the opponent because you just can't do what you would normally do. You won't make the most effective play because you're playing against this fucking guy, who just ruins your game plan, right? I think that's one of the things that makes SK the most impactful team, is that they have 2 players that are like that. By the way, that doesn't mean that FalleN is the best AWPer. It's just a factor in his favor. And I think that it's enough of a factor in his favor, and he imposes so much respect, and he's so good at finding opening kills, and he's so good in clutches, and he's so good on T-side as an AWPer, that all these factors together make him better as an AWPer than KennyS. And if you want to, you can say that he's better than Device, or if you want to, you could argue that he's better than Simple. I wouldn't advise doing that, but if that's your opinion, then so be it. But that's one of the things that FalleN has, this intimidation factor, that he has more so than any other AWPer in the game, even more than Simple, I'd argue. Just because he might not be, as much of a brute force player, but he's very, very intelligent, very cerebral, and very crafty in the way that he finds kills, and that just terrifies players, because they feel like they've died they die in a way that they didn't consider to be a relevant possibility, and this happens all the time. So it changes the amount of relevant possibilities, which then changes your behavior. So I just thought that was an interesting idea that came to me while I was on Twitter, and I think that is something that we should consider a little bit more when we talk about these kinds of players, when we talk about Simple, when we talk about Draken, when we talk about Fur, when we talk about FalleN. And that's something that we should really ask players about, because these players are the ones that will be the best judges of the intimidation factors of their partners, compatriots, or their opponents, really. So anyway, that's all for this video. I hope you enjoyed it. If you do, please subscribe. If you want to talk to me, feel free to talk to me on Twitter. I'm very responsive there, and I love having conversations. That's how I came up with this idea. So thank you very much. If there's any problems with the audio, this is a new mic setup. If it's too quiet, I'm talking pretty quietly right now. If it's too quiet, let me know. I'll talk louder in a more boisterous voice. But I hope you guys have a lovely day, and I'll probably be making videos soon after an upcoming article, so keep posted for that. Subscribe, and have a lovely day.